Okay, we step now into the New Testament. The nature wisdom tradition continues in the New Testament. Now, I think it's probably not a surprise to you that nobody was around chronicling the birth of Jesus when he was born. The birth of Jesus didn't become important until 30-some years later. And so when the church tried to explain that birth, the legends, the religious spirituality, we want to call them myths, came into being. And what do they tell us about the birth of Jesus? First of all, the birth was announced to who first? Shepherds abiding in their fields by night. Where do they go? They go to a cave, womb-like stable where Jesus is lying in a manger. And from all those Christmas cards and carols, we all know that who was around the manger with Jesus? No, they're not there yet. The sheep, the oxen, the donkey, the dove in the rafters, all that neat song we sing at Christmas time. And so what that tells us is that Jesus' birth wasn't just for human beings. Jesus' birth was for all creation. And the animals are there to represent all of creation. And then the shepherds arrive. And then, who comes 3 years later? The wise men, the magi, the kings. How do they know that Jesus is there? Star. Okay, they're guided by the star. What does that tell us? It tells us that the birth of Jesus was not only an event for people and animals and creation on this planet, but it tells us it was a cosmic event. That's what the star represents. Christ is a cosmic event. So, right at the very beginning of our gospel stories, we have this nature wisdom being expressed there. And then Jesus grew up in a land that we talked about. He grew up within this nature wisdom tradition. He spent a great deal of his time in the outdoors. And what did we say he did for a living for the first part of his life? Carpenter. He worked with wood. Who is it over here who works with wood? I lost it. There he is. So you work with wood. I think you need support me on this. You have to know about grains and how to cut the wood and how to work with it efficiently, especially with primitive tools. And so, Jesus was tuned into that. Now, this is another little tidbit I'm going to tell you. It'll change your whole perception of Jesus. We don't know for sure, but we do know this, that during the time that Jesus was a carpenter, there was no Lowe's, there was no Home Depot, there was no lumber yard. And so many people who were carpenters were also involved in cutting and preparing their own trees. So the new image of Jesus is Jesus as lumberjack. So there we are, So Jesus spent his time preaching and talking in nature metaphors about his parables, and all of that stuff is about the natural world, most of it. So we can kind of skip through that and give you some chance to read that yourself and pick out those green words, so to speak. But we come to the crucifixion, which is kind of a pivotal point for us, right? All right, so the crucifixion of Jesus also is an event that's not just for people. So think back to your Good Friday stories. What happens at the crucifixion? Jesus is dying on the cross. What happens? Pardon? It's dark. It gets dark. Sun stood still. There's an eclipse. So if the star represents a cosmic Christ at birth, what do you think the sun turning black represents? Cosmic Christ event. His death is a cosmic event that's changing all of creation. What else happens? salvation affects all of the earth. It wasn't just for human beings. He's bringing about a new creation and salvation for human beings. Salvation means wholeness. He's bringing about wholeness for human beings. He's bringing about a new creation for the whole creation of we know as earth. And there's this whole cosmic aspect to it.